Who is Savathun, you ask?
Yeah, who is she? Because all I know is that she's a big spooky hive baddie that I'm gonna go kill in the Witch Queen for Destiny 2. The big S has been around in Destiny for a lot longer than most players know about, but in the game, we don't know a whole lot about her. What are her motivations? Why has she been coined Destiny's best villain? Why does Destiny have so many villains? In this series, we're gonna break down the lore of Destiny for those who may want to know what's going on in the game, but for various reasons, just aren't familiar with certain stories. This video is for the player who wants the story to be told to them in-game and doesn't want to have to do a scavenger hunt to put pieces together. Trust me, this series is also for me, the real dummy of today's video. So while I do my research live at twitch.tv/EvanF1997, you guys get to see the full end of that research displayed. And if you want to join in on the talk, be sure to come by my stream. Let's start today with the biggest villain of them all and count how many times she has really shown up in Destiny. Let's meet Savathun. Lore for Dummies. Let's go back to the beginning. No, I don't mean vanilla Destiny. I mean the lore book from the Taken King, the Books of Sorrow. The Books of Sorrow tells the origin story of Oryx, but it also starts with all three hive gods on the planet Fundament. This giant storming joy of a planet hates anything to do with light and has the original race known as Krill or Proto-Hive feeding off of helium and avoiding monsters. The OG Hive have very short lives and spend most of their time avoiding death. The Hive were so weak that they even believed that they were the natural prey of the universe. Basically, one giant loot cave. The king had a little pet wormy in a jar, but this king was kind of an insane king too. So the people pull a Julius Caesar on him, and all of his advisors, including the teacher of his daughters, ran his shit. Arash, Zero, and Sathona. Now we're out on a voyage, cold and lost. They are 5 years old. Yes, 5-year-olds were lost and losing hope. These three sisters took a blood pact to prove that they are in fact blood sisters, even though they already were, but okay. They sail far and wide and have over a year's worth of reflecting and growing until one day they find a ship called the Needle, and they use the Needle to dive under the spooky waters of the deep. Why did they do this? Well, our queen of lies, deception, and stealing, apparently, took the baby worm that her father had. And even though the worm is dead, it can still communicate with them and guide them where to go. Listen, it's a magical worm. I don't know what else to tell you. That journey into the deep oceans, and by oceans, I mean nasty, foamy metal substances, was met. They dove down into these awful waters, and they met a giant leviathan.
Not the Calus one.
The sea monster type, and it warns them to go back. But they made it this far listening to a little baby worm in a jar, so how bad could it be? Apparently, it was spooky enough that a continent-sized sea monster was even afraid. So the sisters don't listen to Larry the Leviathan, and instead to their dead worm that can still whisper and guide them to the quote-unquote honest worm, Yule, who explains to these sisters that the worm gods have been trapped under the Fundament oceans and in the deep. So the worm gods make a bargain with the sisters to escape. That's how the Hive are made. A bargain, a nasty one at that. A symbiosis that basically means that all the Hive from now on have to have a worm placed in their bodies to feed, and in return this gives them eternal life so long as they can feed it. Think of the basketball from Space Jam, except not only do basketballs need to be placed inside of every newborn hive, but they have to feed it constantly or they will be consumed by their basketballs. These three went from fragile little things to full-on gods overnight. The only problem was part 2 of that deal, the feeding part. Feeding requires killing, and killing was now a part of every single hive's goal if they wanted to stay alive. Every hive has to obey their true nature. So for the big S, that means she must obey trickery for self-gain. Think of Savathun like one giant Loki, except this one has to stay lying to stay alive. The hive were made more powerful by their worm, and they will die by the worm. That logic? Sword logic. So things happen. Orash turns into a guy and takes on an adult named Oryx, later to be Oryx, the Taken King, when something, another video one day maybe, something kills a worm god or something. Savathun gets her motherly name for her sharp mind and overthrowing Teox, who overthrew these three sisters' father. Hive Empire, Savathun moves from Fundament onto different avenues, but the Queen of Lies has now been made. Now we have a big time jump and into the parts where Savathun has directly impacted our story. Aside from the lore books, in-game, Savathun has shown up a lot over the course of Destiny 2. To name locations, how about Titan, Io, Dreaming City, Mars, in the Leviathan, the Moon, even in the Tower, and technically anywhere this bald guy has been in the past year. You could say she gets around. Savathun's ultimate plan is to get rid of the worm that is slowly eating her away, and her original plan was the most 5-head, but also 1-head line of thinking I have ever heard. Her plan, not joking, was to throw the hive that were giving her tribute or credit for kills that they had achieved into a black hole, because the hope was that time would be slowed down and the rate of feeding the worm would also be slowed down. Look, man, this part is freaky, but it didn't work either way, and the worm only got hungrier as a result. You try to trick the game, you get punished. She did come to a sort of realization that killing wasn't her main MO, and instead coined the term Imbaru for feeding the worm by only tricking and not needing to kill. Now we have another time jump to the Destiny 2 story of Titan. After being punished by the worms, the plan was simple. Try everything you can to get rid of the damn worm in her body so she could live freely without having to constantly feed it. Well, on Titan, she was placing a lot of life, as this was the capital of the hive worms for her. A lot of what happened here was a wild experiment, turning guardians into crystals.
We came down here as a squad of 9. Got picked off one by one. Watched a wizard rip the light out of my best friend and funnel it into some kind of crystal.
They're harvesting guardians.
And just trying to feed her tribute. Hey, there was even a Larry out in the water too. I'm just saying. The Shrieker in this strike was even named Savathun's Song. So you know, before we got there and started shooting everything, this place was getting down. Jump to Warmind, and Savathun sort of shows up to just drop the hive off at school through a portal, and that's about it here. So we have 2 locations down, but now it's the real meat and potatoes of the story, and that is in Forsaken. A lot of people may think Uldren Sov, now known as Crodran Sov, was the main villain of the story. In actuality, Savathun was the main antagonist. Savathun is the reason for the curse of the Dreaming City, and the reason we had a great DLC. So, I guess thanks, Big S. Going all the way back to the Taken King storyline, Oryx killed Queen Mara Sov of the Awoken in the opening cutscene. This kill and invasion of Mara Sov's throne world. Side note, because throne worlds are really weird and they're not explained super well, throne worlds are basically Pokemon centers, so when you white out, you're not actually dead, you just kind of wake up at a Pokemon center. All right, there you go. That makes sense now. Just know that Mara didn't actually die, and Oryx did take her throne world after her supposed death. Oryx's taking of her throne world also took Riven of 1,000 Voices, who's a magic genie dragon.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
When Oryx eventually got yeeted in the King's Fall raid, Savathun stepped into that throne world of Mara Sov and became the new leader for Riven. Mara escaped, Shattered Throne became a dungeon, and Savathun made Riven her tricky accomplice. When we beat that giant butthole meatball in the final mission of the campaign, that was a Taken Riven talking. That Mara saw vision in the Forsaken story, also Riven talking to Uldren. The Last Wish raid where a random NPC talks to you, that is also a Taken Riven. And when you complete the Last Wish raid, the true trick is revealed as Savathun using Riven has unleashed a curse on the Dreaming City, trapping it in a perpetual cycle. When we beat the Shattered Throne and kill Savathun's daughter, dueling Karu, you'd think it would be broken. But no, it's not broken. It's on a loop, due to a character important to the Big S's legacy, and that character is named
Kuria.
Throwing it back in time a bit, how do you think Savathun learned how to jump into black holes? Meet Koria Blade Transform. This giant Hydra was taken by Oryx and then gifted to Savathun. Koria knows how to manipulate time, and since Koria is under Savathun's control, that means Savathun can keep the Dreaming City in a time loop.
I could put people in a time loop. Okay, look, you did this, and then you put yourself in a time loop. Oh.
That is Forsaken in a nutshell. The loop and the curse still remain to this day, and I have a 15th Wish video you guys can watch if you want to. Jumping all the way to the season of Opulence, we have the story of Savathun and Gahlran. The Big S was in for another Imbaru and baited my man Gahlran with the Crown of Sorrow. It was supposed to be Calus wearing the helmet, but Calus, in all of his thickness and definitely being an asshole, raised a Cabal Bather to take on the Crown of Sorrow for him. Whoever wears the crown is under Savathun's control, and Calus's plan was to raise a strong Bather to try on the mask before he did and see if it was bait or not. It was obviously bait, and Gahlran got the Destiny suds from putting on the helmet. Real dick move from Calus. My man Gahlran was only a few hours old after all, and this did lead us to not have to only clean up his mess in the menagerie, but the Crown of Sorrow raid too. I'm starting to think Savathun is where all the good content is. Jumping all the way to Shadowkeep now. Savathun gave Crota's daughter, Hash-Slinging Slashladun, 2 boons to raise the Scarlet Keep and to reanimate this flamey boy in the Pit of Heresy dungeon. This was why we got sent to the moon in Shadowkeep. Savathun's real plan was to get all of Oryx's bloodline killed and trick them into thinking that they even had a chance against fighting us. She also baited Eris into finding that giant Dorito ship in the moon. A real pyramid scheme.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
This was also the time where Savathun's one-hit wonder and title music of Shadowkeep started being spread around the world to characters, and when the tower NPCs started humming the song too. It's like that one song that never leaves you, you know, like September by Earth, Wind, and Fire. Do you remember? I'm gonna get demonetized. Festering Core Strike had us fighting the Taken and hearing about how Savathun using Koria is fighting a war against the Vex on Io. This basically sets up more foreshadowing for the Big S to arrive one day and plays into that Imbaru stuff we talked about earlier. Season of Arrivals is where things get interesting again. Savathun, with the help of that strike boss Nokris from Warmind, who's a removed son of Oryx, fun fact, for practicing necromancy, helps Savathun get what she wants. Nokris is tricked into helping Savathun and interferes with us talking to the pyramid ships. Her truth, according to that cutscene we started the video with, was to protect us from the pyramid ships. I mean, can you blame her? Have you seen the Crucible with stasis? We get Ruinous Effigy from that tree that's also a darkness tree and shoot her eyes around the universe of Destiny. So something something spy camera eyeballs, something something Savathun. Now we jump from Season of Arrivals to when most of the game got sunset, except for Savathun's story, Beyond Light and Season of the Hunt time, where things really start ramping up for what this character is all about. Osiris, our bald-headed leader of that game mode that keeps changing on the weekends, is doing a recon mission and basically gets jumped by the High Celebrant of Xivu Arath, who we eventually kill in that Dreaming City mission that is always bugged. Sagira dies off screen in a real plot device moment that doesn't make sense until later. This is when we didn't know until season 15 that Osiris had become Osiris Thun, and the real one may still be alive, but who can you really trust? We don't know until later that an off-screen death for Sagira makes sense to protect the plot device of the story. Osiris Thun guides us to free Crodrin Saw from the spider in the Season of the Hunt. Crow is on the Tangled Shore with no memory of who he was in another life. Remember, we did shoot him in the head in Destiny 2 Forsaken, so he's back and forgot all about us. We eventually free him with technically Savathun's help. Season of the Chosen. You would think this has less to do with the big S, but it does tell us that Savathun and Xivu took over the Cabal homeworld of Torah Battle by baiting a war general to do some research on the hive and opening up a portal so they could invade the Cabal homeworld. The leader of the new Cabal, Caitl, is also, fun fact, Calus's daughter, who by nobody's surprise has some daddy issues. We also get a fat hint about Savathun in the Presage mission, where we see the Crown of Sorrow. So if you did all 19 data pads, or watched a video of somebody who did all 19 data pads, this was another hint that Osiris had been exploring the ship was actually Savathun instead. Because instead of leaving the Crown of Sorrow on the ship, Osiris was like, hey, we should bring the ship back to the tower, man, it'd be great. Now that we are done with Season of the Chosen, we're gonna jump to even more recent, where Bungie started to really reveal the identity of Osiris Thun in the Season of the Splicer, aka the Vault of Glass Return season. So we kill
Kuria.
This season, which according to what we know, should break Savathun's grip on the Taken, and hypothetically, it should have broken the cycle of that curse in the Dreaming City. But it didn't, so I guess breaking the cycle from killing Kuria was a big old cake of lies, like a lot of things Savathun does. Savathun also baited Lakshmi into becoming a retconned anti-Fallenist for the sake of Bungie to get rid of factions, but also to progress the Savathun is Osiris plot. At the end of the season, we see Osiris Thun looking down at the chaos that she let happen. And RIP factions forever. Finally, we are in the season where Savathun is revealed. We got to chase her, and Mara reveals that Osiris is Savathun the whole time. Savathun is now all caught up in the story. She tells us we're not her enemy. She wants her worm taken out of her. She shows Crow who he was in a previous life. There's gonna be some sort of exorcism to get the worm out of her. She's clearly striking a weird deal with Mara Sov, and she somehow will have the light in the Witch Queen. Now it's time to just start guessing some theories. So please jump in the comment section all you want to, man. This is where you can go bananas. My theory for now is that the big S won't even be our main enemy in the Witch Queen. That will definitely piss off a lot of players, but my reasoning has been there the whole time. If Savathun has the light, it means she no longer has her worm, which means she doesn't have to trick us anymore. Even if it is her true nature, She isn't sworn by it. She won't die by it. But let's be real here. This is still a video game, and people still want to see Savathun die. So she may die, or she may use her trickery to get us to work with her to fight an even bigger evil. On Bungie's website, bungie.net, it does say that the raid will take place in a pyramid ship against an imprisoned ancient evil. This could mean Taniks again. Please God, yes, Taniks again. It could mean a worm god somehow, or it could mean our first true look at what Savathun has been afraid of more than anything. A true darkness enemy trapped. Or it could be Taniks riding a worm god. I'm just saying. That would be cool. Anyways, everybody, that is every time Savathun showed up in the story, and I hope you enjoyed this video as it took a while to do all the research for it and put it together. I want to lend a big thank you to Mylan Games for helping me with the research, and to Twitch chat for helping me put this script together. And hey, a big thank you to you. You watching this right now. Without you watching this, I wouldn't be making this. So I guess we're in it together. Be sure to drop a like and a sub if you want more of these dives into lore for dummies. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Peace.